So first about me. My name is Ilya. I live here for the last 12 years in Amsterdam. I spent 20 years doing hardcore engineering, replatforming, refactorings of platforms like legacy platforms, working for companies like IKEA, Nike, and others. So what I'm doing right now is I started more than a year ago, an agency called ENDGAME. And what we're trying to do is basically the same, but we're building systems which are building other systems or doing any kind of legacy modernizations. And what we also do and try to scale these practices, like agentic engineering practices, to organizations of 500 engineers to sometimes we'll have clients of 3,000 engineers. And this is the challenge. When you have a team of 2-3 people, it's one challenge, right? The other challenge is how do we do it on the scale of 3,000 people? And what do we do with all this spend? How do we make sure that we have return of investment? How do we make sure that people are actually using it in a secure way? And this is what we try to reflect on for the last year. And what we learned is it's basically difficult situation on the market right now. So people don't trust agents. People think that still you need to go and verify each line of code produced by agent, even if you do a simple Next.js application. Question to you guys, how many of you are using Claude Code daily or any kind of agentic and don't use ID at all? All right. I think 5 people, including the first row here and myself. That's fine. Because what we learned is agentic system is still a system, it's still a distributed system, and it still needs to have the same approach, the same type of patterns as if we're building and scaling distributed systems. But the difficulty is it fails silently. You can get 200, but task is sloppy, it's not done, code produced is very much bad quality, and so on and so forth. So the other problem is that this nuclear energy you can contain and you can put into any kind of pipelines, any kind of enterprise environment, and you need to make sure that you still have salary money for the next month, and you still have your environment keys secure, right? And this was going to be the talk about. So what we see right now, a lot of stuff, what we see happening with agentic engineering and building agentic systems, it's basically very much derived from the patterns of SRE, development experience, and what we were doing for the last 20 years with cloud movement and cloud transformations. So if we look into, for example, DevX, and this is the most interesting topic for me, it shifts to agentic experience. What does it mean in reality? You need to have environments provisioned in seconds of time. You need to understand how to test your systems. You need to be able to sustain the load of those environments against the agents and fleets of agents. And this is something I can talk for hours and hours afterwards. I try to prepare this talk be more high level, but if you want to go into details, I will be still here around. Just let's catch up. So how we look into the problem itself. So you have one part of the problem, which is agentic engineering. And this is what we're doing, I assume, majority of us every day. This is how do we make sure that we have a proper harness on the code base level or multiple code bases. How do we make sure that agents have verification, safety net, verification points? How do we make sure that we're able to single shot some small things and it's going to work out and the code will be produced on the level of patterns we use in our software, on the level of the code standards, and I can continue on and on. And this is one part. This is more individual and team level. If we scale it to the organization of 3,000 people, we'll have totally different problems. And the problems are being solved in the past, as I said, with the cloud transformation, and what we call right now this type of setup as SRE or any kind of a team that's responsible for making sure that best practices, best patterns, secure way of doing things is scaled across organization. We call it agentic enablement. And this is the difference in terms of how to do it locally with 3 people and how to scale it to a whole organization. So how I structure the talk itself is 3 areas. I will basically go through a list of questions we typically being asked from our clients. And those questions are sometimes technical, those questions are operational to the most extent, and a lot of questions in organizational. Again, this is not a full list. I try to condense it and distill into the most important ones. Let's go. So in terms of technical patterns, I will cover just a couple because you definitely know majority of them. So the first one is the most difficult part to convince any developer to do is sandbox their agents. You have many ways to do it, but the problem, if you don't do it, you can have security leakages, you can have the majority of things that are going out of your agent being actually not secure as well. It can access network you don't want to access. And this is one of the biggest problems we see in the big organizations, that they just give away Claude team subscriptions. People start using it on the level of their computers or their environments, local environments, and actually what we have, and it's going to be snowballing in the future. We've heard right now when some talks of new Shai-Hulud attacks through Claude Code recently is going to happen more and more. And make sure that you secure and make your agents of least privilege access to whatever they're doing. Next, what we started to explore even a year ago is I knew that the coding on the individual level, on the one repo, will be solved. But what's not going to be solved and is going to be hard to do is context management on the scale of a system. And system, typically, what I call a system, is going to be multiple repositories, sometimes separate repo for front end, 5 different services, some different configurations, Terraform, end-to-end tests, and so on and so forth. And this is where you think, okay, how do we do it? How do we do it on the scale of multiple repositories? And we started to experiment with something we call context hubs. So it's a separate repo that has all the decisions, structured way of recording what ADRs across the system are. And then we try to shift towards building up on the top of it, building different context graphs. And there are multiple things on the market you can try away right away, from byte rover to do context on team level to actually code base level understanding like Graphify. And then, of course, we start to develop our own tools. And I think this is where it all goes, is you will start developing your own custom tools to understand and build better systems and record records like ADRs, record scope, and any kind of product decisions. Fun fact, what we actually do, we don't have the ideal state for us. Even if we go to clients and work on some complex environments, we don't like to use Jira's, Linears, or any kind of this stuff because we don't think it's actually suitable for agents. What we usually do, we have a JSON-L files, for example, in the repo, in a separate context hub repo, and we sync it back and forth just for reporting for product managers and stuff. Another pattern we've seen in the wild is if you have handovers from one activity to another activity. For example, you have a PRD or Epic or any kind of specification, you need to set up a very much standardized format. And more to that, you need to verify and validate that the format is actually perceived and filled out and worked well for in between of those stages. Which means you need to start consolidating and understand how do we standardize all the handover artifacts across the company. Next, the most interesting part is when people ask me, how do we do with the autonomous agents? Where do we deploy it? This seems like a big capital investment we need to do. But my answer usually is, if you have GitHub Actions, this is the best starting point for you to go into autonomous agents. And this is true because you have something you can embed into your pipeline right away. means you have events that are going from your CI pipeline. Also, what you have is sandbox environment right away. So this is the easiest way to do it. And what we started to do quite a lot is going from simple ways of course, everyone is doing, CodeRabbit is here doing PR reviews. Probably we've been doing a bit of Claude code actions and tweaking that. But what we're doing to the next level is a good example of very advanced pipeline can be a bug hunting pipeline, where you do understand the most complex areas of your code base. You go and, with any change, you run to an understanding, semantic understanding, what can break from business standpoint, also from the technical standpoint, and try to auto-fix it. So I think if you will be able to do it in your CI pipeline, that's going to be, I think, one of the big wins for the whole team, which will require a lot of context, a lot of context management, suppression, and working on this. If we go up next, I think the first interesting point is, like, of course, GitHub Actions can cover a lot. You can embed agents into your CI. It's going to be slow. And then we're going to more advanced patterns, like, okay, we can wrap the, for example, Claude SDK or Deep Agents SDK into a Python application, for example, right? Host it in Docker somewhere, provide some pull mechanics or push mechanics on the webhooks, and then it's going to be always on fast replying type of agent. Very simple way of how to start rebuilding your OpenClaw is thinking that way. That's all about technical pattern. Very easy. You can embed your agents into your CI pipeline. You need to start doing this. You need to start thinking about the context. And context is not stale. The problem with context is also it's another layer of activities your team should be doing. Suppression, stale context, review of the context, understand what should be put, how to access it properly, how to make it accessible, fast, reliable to the agent. Let's go into operational. So the first question we're usually asked is, like, okay, if we go into Claude, and Claude is the massive infrastructure winning the market right now, it's a huge vendor lock-in. And apart from this, there are multiple other things that are asked about the Claude and how do we protect ourselves going single vendor. Of course, the whole harness, the Claude code, the installable package you install in your environment and actually interact in the terminal or through SDK is the most powerful one in terms of functionality and features. And no one wants to lose these features. For example, workflows recently were announced. It's quite hard to imagine my life without workflows right now. So I don't want to lose this functionality. But what do I do is, like, I don't have money for this. I cannot afford it on the scale of 3,000 people. So what do? Simple way, what we advise to do is, like, look into compatible models and compatible APIs. And also there is a way to implement something called LLM Gateway, which provides an ability to also translate any kind of, for example, Bedrock hosted models, cheaper open weight models like Kimi, for example, and make them Claude compatible. So you can easily switch, you can easily track what the whole organization do. But apart from this, LLM Gateway provides a lot of security features, allow lists for MCPs, any kind of settings, prompt injection mechanism, and stuff. Next is, how do we make sure that we spend some money on something which is valuable? And also there is DX and many other big platforms. You pay probably hundreds of thousands of euros every year. We think that it's going to be very easy to just connect to basically LLM hotel and create a sync to your Prometheus and put Grafana on the top. And then what you can get from it, you can get quite a lot. You can get not only like the whole span, but also price per commit, what was the model used. If you connect every type of PR to any story or record, what is the value, you can think more. So how much did they actually spend on delivering some value? And then if you go next and next, you can connect it to any kind of product management tools or analytical tools for customer insights, and you can understand quite a lot in terms of where your spend is going. Simple way, don't overthink, don't over-engineer. You already have it. Just create a sync of OTL from your Claude code or any kind of other tool to your environment. Another question, how do we keep cost in check? And there are multiple ways. I don't want to speak about the individual level much, but I think I want to open up with a bit of try out some tools that are doing rationing of the output of tools. What it does, usually you have a batch of tools being run from the Claude code or any kind of agent, and what you can do with it, you can say, okay, I don't need the whole output, and those tools like RTK or Headroom allow to actually ration, make sure that your agent gets only what it needs. But apart from this, of course, cost caps and any kind of progressive autonomy, not just to make sure that you don't allow your agents to do more than they need to do. If you go up in terms of the patterns, what we also see helps if you have any kind of blueprints of your services available from your DevX team. For example, how to provision a fast API service, or how do we provision a microservice connected to Kafka right away and start building fast. You need to make sure that there is a baked-in harness into it already in place. Means skills to do the important stuff, hooks, any kind of workflows that are needed, any kind of additional verification points that should be in place. So any kind of distributed package within the organization, outside the organization, I assume right now should have some harness embedded. Internal marketplaces, again, the fastest way to start it is just Git repo, nothing more. Git repo provides a governance mechanism and many more to actually make it scalable to the whole organization and contributable to the whole organization. And many companies really think that context and information within the company is shared and everyone knows everything, which is not true in many cases. And use Confluence and any kind of that tools. We think that Confluence and human focus tools are not good for agents. What we usually do is we create something called context distribution, and we use standard imagery or artifactories to do it. So you can actually package piece of context from one team, push it there, version it, and another team can actually pull it, or another agent can pull it. Moving on, quite fast. Organizational patterns, and this is where the fun starts. So if you look into everything I discussed, it becomes a massive actual job and probably a separate function within the organization. Why? Because it's not very much even. We have different priorities. Everyone has different experience, and you need to make sure that the best practices are distributed across the organization, but also you need to have very reliable platform to run your agents. And for us, how we see the whole platform itself, it doesn't matter whether you do agentic engineering or you do any kind of business process automation with agents, it can be run on the same platform. And on the screen, you see a bunch of layers that you need to introduce to make it happen, including orchestration, including governance, including security layers, including the micro VMs for sandboxing, and so on and so forth. In terms of teams, and this is a big question, I can talk for years about it. And it starts with like magical number 3. And why 3? Because there is something called coordination communication tax in the organizational design. And 3 people is where there is it's a golden number where your communication paths are not growing exponentially. After this, they are. Means if you add another person to the team, another person to the team, another person to the team, you spend more and more time on collaboration, communication. And right now with agents, what it allows us to do to actually go back to these small teams. It opens a lot of questions. What do we do with other people? How do we relocate capacity? I don't want to talk about this. What it means, you still need to enable all of those pods and teams to have best practices. And how we think what should be done is exactly this agentic enablement. And this is a separate team that does the job of making sure that agentic experience is on the high level, the development experience as well. And how to scale it practically, because there should be also dynamics and movements how to do it. So how do we actually structure it? We try to find the pockets of adoption within the company. We try to find those people, pathfinder teams that are doing already quite a lot what I've listed, and try to institutionalize and make sure that this knowledge and these patterns and those practices are codified. And this is exactly where enablement team plays well, and distribute through champion network of other teams to the whole organization. So all in all, just to conclude what I was talking about, it's quite a lot we can derive from practices and disciplines we had in the past already. And this is SRE, development experience, cloud engineering, and how we went from knowing nothing about the cloud and distributed systems in the cloud to where we are at right now. But some stuff is very new. And you can get a lot from this past, but you need to learn quite a lot. And what I want to show you and what I want to kind of produce a bit of sprinkle of interest is this is still a distributed system. You can embed your agent and put structured output out of them and connect to any kind of business processes and business workflows, including your SDLC. It's totally the same. But you need to embrace this entropy, and you need to understand how to move on with this nuclear power that is actually can be for good and for bad. Thank you.
We have a first question for you. Part of our problem with agentic AI is difficulty finding best practices. We're all struggling with this because it's changing so fast. What's your approach on building a foundational framework, prompts, skills, rules, etc., versus compound engineering and that type of thing?
Good question. My take on this would be there are some things you can already. So there are multiple directions how to answer this question. One would be is you already have things that are more or less set, right? Which are like skills will be here and standardized. It's still not very much. Also, what you do with the context engineering, to be honest, it's in the simplest form, it's just markdown files and records. But if you go up and up in terms of how do we structure it, it's basically same as doing a specific data model, right, for how you do stuff as a process. For example, you need to record architectural decisions. Each of them should have ID. It's connected to a specific system, and so on and so forth. So basically, underlying execution layer can change in how you do it, but this knowledge won't be lost. So how to start with this is like, start thinking about what I do, how I do, what I need to report, and what type of tacit knowledge should start being more explicit within my team or organization. And then only think about how we do it, what it is. But how we do it, what it is basically some stuff which is standardized already.
That leads really well into the next question, which is how do you maintain those context hubs with architectural changes, decision logs, etc., automatically as you go through this?
Everyone thinks that it's going to be just plug and play and maintained automatically, and then people should not correct. Unfortunately, it's not the reality. It's, as I said, it's going to be more of a additional level of activities that the team and the individual should do. But there are a couple of ways to do it. So the simplest way, again, I think I'm back to foundational engineering here, is like you can connect Git hooks to making sure that some stuff after your change is updated, and then review it and put together with the PR, for example. Additionally, of course, you can do weekly automations to do it. But what I like is some stuff which is agents to agent can be done automatically, and there is a lot of this. But some stuff which is, again, as I mentioned, there is product decision, architectural decision, some specific functionality and intent, what we want to do should be reviewed by human beings.
All right. Next question we have, do you have any advice for teams or organizations that create high-risk code, for example, software as a medical device, and employ AI agents, or do the same rules apply?
Wonderful question. We have two big healthcare clients. We recently were doing grave digging in the application of 45 years old with C++ and Delphi. Technically, same rules on working on the code base will apply, totally the same. There is a lot of regulatory mechanics that you need to comply to. For example, you cannot do fully automated merges. You cannot do quite a lot of things that you would be imagining doing automatically, including the maintenance of the documentation, because it still should be signed off by humans. But in general, it goes back to safety net and testing. How do you test it? But you will be surprised that if in medical devices, everyone thinks that it's covered with like 100% coverage of tests and stuff. No, it's not the case. it's not the case. I've seen it all. No, it's not the case. So my take on this is there are multiple ways to do it, but also multiple ways how to contain the change and how to understand how we can touch all of this with AI, because the speed of change will be fast. I will just put one interesting direction. Try to understand what characterization tests are. It's basically regression tests without understanding the output. And what we usually do when we step into brownfield, we put together a safety net of characterization tests, at least around some of the most business critical or mission critical modules. Then you kind of understand, okay, this is black box, this is how it worked before. Funnily enough, you will find a lot of bugs in the first place, but then you also will understand this is how the state of it should be before we touch in with agents.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. Humans make bugs too. We are also non-deterministic entities.
Exactly. Fortunately.
All right, next one up, talking about code review. So usually we have a pair of developers for front end and back end in a team to review work effectively. How would that work in a 3-person team?
Difficult question to answer. First, we started with it's a bit of a history and learning from myself and doing this for some time already. We started with we don't care about the programming languages anymore, and we need just fundamental engineering experience and expertise, like system design, understanding how stuff works, and we still keep it as a basis. But we still think that some specialization will be required and needed, and it works well, especially if you touch some front end, if you touch some databases, if you touch some legacy and how to. So there's still a lot of differentiation in terms of this specialization, and it will be capped. So it means you still need those on the team, but then it means you need to assemble the higher bar for making sure that those people are effective is set, right? But I don't have an answer complete to this question, but I think the pointer is still that you still need specialization. You still will need specialization, but to majority of extent with AI, you can learn fast. And if you have this fundamental knowledge, you can learn quite a lot. For example, I started doing quite a lot of Rust, which is hard to learn. I learned it the agentic way instead of just doing .NET as well. So .NET, haven't done any .NET in the past. Right now, I'm pretty confident we can pass the interview for senior developer, .NET developer.
Yeah. One last question that we'll get to, and I think it ties into this. If you have those expertises, you can embed them in skills or other things. So your front-end developer can do a front-end review skill that looks for those particular things and similar that can be reused. And this gets to this last question we have time for, which is, do you have a perspective on running PR review locally through a skill versus a CI agent, dedicated agent, things like that?
And that's complementary, to be honest. It's complementary because you need to make sure that, first of all, this is still your code, right? It doesn't matter who. Someone should be responsible for the code and accountable for the whole system to be reliable, running the production stuff. So it's still, you need to know the code base. The shift is how you do it and how you make sure that this is this code base is reliable to the standards and it's not doing any harm. And that's the whole difference, right? There are multiple ways of doing this, agentic way, of course, but to some extent, you can use the agents to be your navigator and kind of do your legwork for you, but you just make sure that it's on the proper level.
All right, that's all we have time for. Let's get one more thank you for Ilya.
Thank you.